everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is Daniela Zohlman. I am the territory manager for Pinecrest at the David Siddons Group. Welcome to the Better Decisions podcast. Today we have Aaron Zielski. He is the president of ADZ Homes. They're a boutique general contracting and design company who specialize in ultra high-end custom home construction, large-scale remodeling, ground-up new construction. We're going to let him tell us a little bit more. So welcome, Aaron. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about who you are, how you got into the business, a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I grew up in the business. I grew up in Maryland. My dad built subdivisions. And then I worked a little bit in the commercial side of things, shopping centers out in the West Coast in Los Angeles.
Cool.
Came back right before the 06, 07 bubble burst. So we had a couple of projects going on there. And that was really, I think, the beginning of the, pretty high-end stuff, some big projects. They were up in Jupiter.
Nice.
And then from there, kind of, rode out the storm on the back half of that. And I realized somewhere along the way, we got into the small stuff, and I realized I'm terrible at it. So
small stuff, you mean what? Sorry, in terms of like smaller homes or smaller projects and like,
smaller,
like doing bathroom remodeling. Okay.
Smaller, inexpensive projects. So typically most of our scope of work are things that we own. However, we'll work with people on some of the larger projects. So you wouldn't necessarily call me to do a bathroom.
Right.
But if we're talking about doing an entire, ground up construction or, a major, reno project, then sure. So we were playing in the less expensive, shall we say, houses. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's hard because when you grow up in the business, you have a certain way of looking at things. So for me, if it's not done exactly correctly, I get irritated. And so what happens is I end up having very expensive subs. I expect the work to be at a certain quality, but that costs money.
Right.
So at some point we started really finding our niche in the, upper end, in Miami, it's sort of a lot of it has evolved into upper end. When you're talking about Pinecrest, you're talking about Coconut Grove, Miami Beach, they're high dollar areas. Yeah. So typically most of the people that are buying there and doing a project are, that's more in that wheelhouse.
Yeah. They're expecting quality.
Yeah, I mean, and the cost of entry now into, a single family home is at a level, I mean, they're high, there's no doubt. So if you're spending a lot of money, you want something nice at the end of the day.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's actually, that's definitely what I want to cover today. I definitely want to understand a little bit more about what is the cost of entry, right? Right now, obviously, that the real estate market is, extremely hot and everyone is, buying homes at top dollar, right? So understanding, for the buyer, is it more lucrative to purchase a home that is already, turnkey, ready to go, buying it at the, height of the market, or is it more cost effective to purchase land and, build ground up? I know you also touched on, the subs that are expensive too. So I definitely want to understand a little bit more about, how it is, any experiences, personal experiences that you've had working with subcontractors and, any mistakes that you might have like come across that you've learned from along the way. So, any good stories that you might be able to share with us, that
yes.
Any
so
projects?
As far as the first question of what is a more sound investment, I think they all can be good investments. If we're looking at this, there's two ways to look at it. Most people that are end users, you're going to be in your property for a significant amount of time. I hate moving.
Yeah.
It's no fun. So I can imagine an end user moving every 5 years. I mean, it's a pain.
Right.
So real estate is always and will always be forgiving. So if you are an end user that's looking to buy and looking to, I want to be here because I love this school system. I want to be here because I love this yard and I can picture, playing, catch with my kids or with my dogs or whatever that is, do it. Because at the end of the day, even if you buy high, you're fine. I did
Right.
an analysis. I read this somewhere and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at this. The average increase in real estate year over year is 7%. It's amazing if you think about that.
It's an incredible investment.
Most people don't think of that. Most people say, "Oh, well, it's a huge year. It was, it's 7%. It was 8%." What about the crash? I went from like '05. I took blocks, from
Mhm.
early on, including crashes. So the reality is, even if you hit a bump, even if tomorrow we have something that's a hiccup, if you're living there, who cares? Can
Right.
you afford your mortgage? As long as you can afford your mortgage,
Right.
right? You're not speculating on it. It really doesn't matter. I mean, as long as okay, I'm, worst case scenario, I'm going to be in this house for 10 years. Most likely, you're probably going to be there for 10 years anyway.
Right.
Me being in this business, I plan on moving often because, it's just another way to kind of move and get to change my kitchens.
Right.
But, I've been in this house for, I think it's 2.5 years now. It's like we blinked.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't have anything on the horizon either. So I think that it's extremely forgiving. I say pick an area that you like. Don't worry about, as an end user, don't worry so much. Find the place that you like, that you want to be there.
Right.
With respect to new construction or something that's already done, that's really just a level of, do you want it exactly how you want it, or do you want it? Are you okay with what you're seeing? I would caution some of the, I'm buying a house that's just been redone, because we don't know the level of work that's been done. There are a lot of people in this that have been making money flipping with shoddy work, where they're covering things up, and there's some great stuff also. That's
Right.
not to say just because it's new and it's a flip means that it's bad, by any means.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that? So, like, if someone is looking at something that, is listed as, hey, this was just redone, perfectly turnkey, move in ready, bring your toothbrush. What are some things that they could be looking out for, let's say? Like, so any advice, on some, like you said, shoddy work, right? Because we know that that happens. Yeah. What are some things that they could possibly be looking out for?
I mean, I think one of the easiest things is to go, or first of all, they're going to get an inspector
Mhm.
to inspect it. But I've had good and bad experience. I've had mostly bad experiences with inspectors. They're there. They're there to cover their own, backside. I think it's wise to look at what's done and then maybe go to the municipality and look
Mhm.
at what permits were pulled for the project.
Okay.
So if you see everything's redone and there isn't a plumbing permit, then most likely that wasn't done with inspections. Um, so I think that's a nice place to start.
Okay.
Your main issues in a house: roof, obviously, especially in Florida.
Of
We have the
course.
sun. I live on Miami Beach. We have the salt. It is unbelievable what those two combinations can do to things.
Yeah.
So,
Deterioration.
make sure that your roof is good, or what's the usable life expectancy to last. Not every, reno requires a new roof,
Right.
but it's certainly a big expense. So that's one. I mean, you can spend 60, $80,000 in the blink of an eye on
Of
a
course.
roof, and so that's a good box to check off. I think looking at the permits, um, and yeah, you have an inspector, and I get it. There's a risk with just jumping in and buying something that's been done, and hopefully it's, the person has a history. Hopefully it's through a company that's done other projects, that they sort of
Hmm.
have a resume of things that they've done.
Yeah.
And I think common sense. We do live in Miami, so there's a lot of stuff that happens in Miami. So common sense goes a long way.
Yeah. Do you have any personal stories of anything that might have happened during, one of your projects that, like you said, you're in Miami, stuff happens, you know, anything that you could share with us that you might have learned from experience? Cause obviously I know you've been doing this a long time, right? So I know it hasn't been a smooth sailing. So anything that you could share with us maybe?
We don't have enough time.
Maybe one of
Um,
your favorite stories.
it's honestly, it's, when you're dealing with business here, it took me a while to get used to it. As I said, I grew up in the Northeast, I spent time out on the West Coast, and I lived in Jupiter for a while. And then when you come to Miami, you're definitely in another world, as far as business. And it's almost an acceptable form of culture to attempt to get away with whatever you can. So it took a long time for me to sort of ramp up and understand. And I think a lot of it's protect yourself. And right, that's why you hire a GC. You hire a GC because sort of what we do. Everybody. I had a meeting 3 days ago, and the guy said, "Don't worry," and I said, "No, it's my job to worry.
Of
Like
course.
that's all I do is worry because that's what gets things done."
Of course.
Um, and we are still getting screwed at any point. I was doing my own personal house. I had an electrician walk off the job, and he was a referral from somebody that had done a lot of work for me. So I
Wow.
actually was a bit too lenient on it. But as soon as, in my business, I have a very select group of subs that I work with.
Okay.
I have, the guy that does most of my tile work, his wife was my daughter's nanny for 3 years. I
Wow.
have very close relationships with the people that I work with because it's easier, because there's a sense of loyalty that, okay, a problem comes up, boom, I call them, they're over. They do great work. They've already been vetted. It's very hard, but we're always, you always have to try and find new people, new subs. And that's when it gets really, dicey.
Yeah.
And I think as a homeowner, I can't imagine doing it as a homeowner because if you're not protected on one side, okay, so you're a homeowner and you're super savvy and you're not going to pay. I mean, I've heard horror stories of people paying 50% up front and never seeing the 50% again. And
Wow.
homeowners don't understand, and people want money up front for labor. Oh, what? So there's a lot of just sort of common sense on the business side, making sure that you're never in front, with the payment. You always want to be on the back side. Okay, they complete, fine. But even so, okay, now you're this, super savvy business person and you've got the payment process worked out. Are you good enough to babysit the work? And a lot of this business, if you have multiple trades, um, one hand points to the other constantly. It is
Right.
never their fault. It is always somebody else's fault. So there's a lot of forethought going in. Of you're always thinking 4 steps down the road
Mhm.
because every one stud that's crooked, and doesn't line up where it's supposed to. Well, you don't see it in framing, but you do see it in another layout. And that's what I
Yeah.
think the biggest challenge of it.
And so, what would you say is kind of the most challenging part of what you do? Is it finding those other subs? Is it managing the projects? I mean, what do you think is the most challenging part of your day to day, I guess?
I think managing the project, once you have the subs, it's a little bit easier. I
Mhm.
have the same people, generally speaking, that come. I have issues. There's just always problems. It's all my work is problem solving.
Right.
So that's what keeps you on your toes because everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes, you make mistakes, we all make mistakes. We never want to admit it, but we all do. Some more than others. And so that's the challenge, um, that you're trying to overcome. Okay, let me look at all of the mistakes that are happening because they're constantly happening, and let's fix them ahead of time before we have to go back and fix them from
Right.
behind.
And this is because you have the same team that you know and is reliable. I mean, would you say that that is the norm? Or do you think that different contractors and different developers are getting new subs for every project? So, what if you have multiple projects going on at the same time? So, how do you find that what you're experiencing is unique to you, even though or do you think that's kind of just a very general kind of issue that everyone has to deal with?
No, I think there's no such thing as no problems.
Yeah.
I don't. It doesn't matter what job site you're on. There will always be problems. The question is, how picky are you? So for us, we're basically custom, which makes it a lot more difficult,
Yeah.
because everything's changing. I've got a project that the municipality is requiring a change of plans constantly. Well, because we change things constantly on the fly, because I'm working with the homeowner and says, well, let's do this. This would be cool. And I don't care. I mean, I think it's cool. So let's do it.
Okay.
City then is like, well, the plans don't match. All right, fine. I'll have to get the architect to draw it. City has to go through. So it's always a process.
Right.
I guess if you're, in this business, I mean, in business in general, there's always something that comes up.
Right.
So it just so happens in the construction side of it, you see supply issues, you see installation issues, you see delivery issues, time constraints. There's just from beginning to end, there's always going to be something.
And I completely agree. And I do, I think that in, like you said, in every business, there's definitely, struggles and problems, and we all have to be creative in our problem solving. Right. But one thing that you touched on that I definitely want to explore a little bit more are the municipalities and the cities. So I know that you've, of course, done work all over this, like all over Miami, right? So you've had projects in Pinecrest, Coral Gables, Coconut Grove, Jupiter, Miami Beach. So what can you say, how easy is it to develop, let's say in Pinecrest, right? In comparison to Coral Gables or Miami Beach where you're working now. So what would you say are some of the differences in those cities and municipalities?
Pinecrest.
You what, sorry?
I love Pinecrest.
I'd love to hear that.
It's funny because, I don't, it's just a pleasure. And that'll be maybe the only thing you hear me say good about municipalities. It is tough. I've always had a great experience. I mean, okay, so there's always hiccups, right? But I think Pinecrest, because it's so small, is one of the easiest, best places to pull permits, to do things. They're awesome at that office.
Amazing.
And I don't have any projects there right now, so I'm certainly not, patting my own, ease of trying to get something through. Nobody's bribing me. It's just it reminds me of small town. It reminds me of pulling a permit in Jupiter or Martin County, where I would call up and they would know who I was, just by hearing my voice.
Right.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
You can deal with the people directly. It's not, a third degree of separation. It's fantastic. Other municipalities, man, there's some good, there's some bad. Each one requires their own strategy. I'm having a nightmare right now with one. I won't say because maybe they will give me even more trouble than they are. I think each one has handled the pandemic differently. So in full disclosure, I haven't worked with Pinecrest since COVID.
Okay.
But I have worked with Miami Shores during and post, they got right back into it. Whereas some of the other ones are still lagging. And I think it's become a crutch for them, as opposed to some of the other ones that have just, got out of it and hit it running. And that's really the challenge. And, a lot of this is also, when you are pulling permits, expect that it's going to be a time process. Hire somebody that either is an amazing runner, and a lot of times runners are hard because there's a lack of communication, or hire somebody that is going to the department personally, because then there's never a lack of communication. Then if there's a problem, there's no lost in the telephone of the corrections needed or what somebody does. I learned that the hard way. We had a runner because I thought it would be easier. I was dealing with Miami Beach on a set of plans.
So you were working with runners. Is that something you would recommend if someone is undergoing this process? Do you think anyone else, runners, expediters, anything that you would recommend?
I think so. I think they can be great. Just make sure that that there's a connection between the runner and the contractor or the architect. You don't want, as an end user, to be caught in the middle trying to explain what needs to be done. And often it's just faster and easier if the contractor goes straight to the horse's mouth.
Got it. No, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And then in terms of, so I know, of course, timing, you obviously touched on the pandemic. One of the big things that we saw, of course, and I know you've experienced as well, are supply chain issues. Can you speak a little bit to how that's affected your business? A little bit more about, delays and timelines for all of that. How has that affected the cost of construction? Anything you have to share about that?
I mean, fortunately for us, we haven't really been affected. We're sort of, remember, we're building one house at a time, two houses. So we're not building a massive, commercial project, multifamily, it changes the scope. And that those guys have had a really hard time.
Mhm.
Lumber's come back down. Everybody heard about how crazy it was. It's come back
Yeah.
down. And I think it's almost like everything else right now, which is you sort of just have to be nimble. Um, Gas is at almost $5 a gallon now. So
Right.
I think in all of our lives, we've had some wrenches thrown at us, and the best that you can do is sort of work with it,
Yeah.
embrace it, if you will. And if they don't have that one floor that you were dying to get, find another one.
Okay.
Because there still is stuff coming through.
Yeah.
It's just not at the same level. But a lot of the high end stuff is still moving.
The high
Most
end
of it.
stuff. I mean, were there delays in like shipment? So I know that you get a lot of, things from Italy and, some appliances from Germany, et cetera. So have you found that those have also come back or?
The appliance situation is real. I fortunately don't need anything right now, but I just gave a brand new dishwasher that was in storage to a friend while she waits for a lift dishwasher that is 12 months on back order.
12 months on back order. Wow.
Washers and dryers, same thing from what I'm hearing. So for sure, if
Wow.
you are starting a big project, know what your constraints are,
Yeah.
where your bottlenecks are, and order ahead of time.
And is that something that you've seen? So 12 months, is that kind of the norm? Or have you,
This is
have you seen?
relatively new for me.
Okay.
I did hear about it. I had a buddy ask me a recommendation for a washer and dryer of all things. So I sent him a couple of places to go, a couple of people to talk to, and he got back to me and said, "Yeah, that's not happening." And I want to say that was probably a year ago. So this has been ongoing for sure.
Wow.
We've dealt with a couple of appliance packages. We have not had issues,
Okay.
fortunately.
That's great.
So that's lucky for us, I guess.
Yeah.
We've also had them ordered well in advance.
That's smart.
So, yeah, one of the things that you want to make sure of when you're doing a project is that the neighborhood can support it. When you're in my shoes, when you're
Right.
more a builder that's building on spec, if you will, that I'm going to build this project and somebody's going to fall in love with it and buy it when it's finished.
Mhm.
And obviously, Pinecrest is a neighborhood where it supports just these massive, awesome properties. So is the Grove. So are areas of the Gables, Miami Beach, also, but limited. Miami Beach has its pockets where, Lagos Island, for instance, sure, off
course.
water, still 10, 12 mil, easy.
Right.
So yeah, I think for us, when we're looking for a place, we're like, okay, where can we find something? Where do we feel comfortable? And then it got to the point with the number side when you buy. I remember having the conversation with other people talking about prices, and we're like, man, this lot doesn't seem like it's a steal. And we're not stealing it, but the numbers just at the end of the day, it's still a work.
You'll
And I think
support it.
that normally I love the steal stuff. Everybody loves the steal stuff. It's fun.
Of course.
That's not going to happen for a while, I don't think. Here I see opportunities come and go frequently.
Mhm.
But I'm going to make just a ton of money just on the purchase, that ship sailed, I think, a while ago.
Okay. But you still feel that there are certain markets that can support the, somewhat inflated cost of land, at the end of the day. So even
Oh,
with cost of
absolutely.
construction.
I think, and I have, I'm a nervous Nelly when it comes to putting a whole bunch of money on a project on spec and
Yeah.
then trying to, Nostradamus my way through where the market's going to be 2 years from now.
Right.
That's hard for anybody to do. And so I'm extremely conservative with my numbers. So that's good. Sometimes I'll pass
Yeah.
on things that I kick myself later and go, why did I pass? But at the end of the day, we're sitting, great on a project, and I'm happy about that.
That's great.
I think the big picture of Miami is having this conversation the other day with big cities and where Miami is, what Miami is becoming. I mean, geez, we just had Formula One here.
I
It's
know.
amazing. Where would you rather live? LA, Chicago, New York, Miami. If you had to live in a big city and you could only choose one. I mean, I get New York. I love New York. I'm from the Northeast. I'm taking Miami over LA and Chicago easy.
Right.
And at this point, it's a toss up. Actually, at this point, where I am in my life, New York doesn't interest me anymore. When I was, 25,
Of course, with family, state
uh,
income tax.
yeah, there's a lot to it. So
Yeah.
when you look at supply demand, I think in Miami will have a demand for years and years to come. You're an
Agreed.
executive, you work in Brickell. Where do you want to live? Do you want to live on the ocean? Well, go live in Miami Beach. Do you want to live in like the cool sort of LA vibe? Go live in the Grove. Do you want land?
Right.
Go move to Pinecrest. Do you like really?
There's
And you can
something
live
for
in,
everyone, right?
you
I
can
mean,
live in all of those places
yeah.
and still drive to work. It's awesome. And
Yeah, it's
I
pretty
think there are
amazing.
very few cities like that. And I think that's a huge asset to what Miami has to offer.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more. I think there's something for everyone here. And in terms of, just, I guess, historically, we've seen, obviously, Miami, the Mediterranean style homes were, everything. Right now, I know you said that you're doing a lot on spec. What kind of styles are you kind of sticking to, or kind of, seeing people want more? What are the trends that you're seeing? And, do you see, the changes? Do you see any changes in styles of homes?
I mean, I'm not much of a conformist, so I try to put a product that speaks to the time period. So for now, every new construction, I'm sure it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize is modern.
Right.
And modern is really not entirely my thing. I like it for sure, but I like it done in a certain way. And so when we set out for this project in Miami Beach, we said, how are we going to make something that's modern, but that's super cool, that I would want to live there? I live in a 1926 house. Yes, the inside's modern, but the outside still has that old, charm. How do we create something that's modern, but has this awesome feel of textures and architectural features and things like that? So I can't really speak to what everyone else is doing, because how we're doing it is not the cheapest. And I see a lot of the new construction, it's done lazily. It's done extremely inexpensive, because while most buyers are savvy to its new construction, they are not savvy to material choices. They're not savvy to the way that things are built. So for instance, Miami Beach, with their current zoning codes, there's a reason why every new house is a box with a one-story garage sitting out front. It's because they're playing the code. So when we presented an idea, we said, you know what, we're going to do something different, because if I don't have to build that, I am not building that.
Right.
And we have something that is, incredibly different. So you hope that you have a good architect that can sort of bring what your vision is to life. I've seen some great stuff coming out from some of the architects, but most of the new construction, personally, it doesn't speak to me. I also think that personally, it didn't take a lot of time and energy that was put into the project. I think it was more, let's just turn it, burn it, sell it, and move on to the next one. And from a business standpoint, that's fantastic. My problem is that's just not who I am as a person.
Right. And for the end user, of course, that's not, ideal by any
Correct.
means.
As an end user, 100%. As an end user, if I were an end user buying, I would build ground up if that's what I wanted. If I wanted a new construction, sort of modern, sort of cool, I would find a builder, I would find an architect, look at some of the architect's work and say, oh my God, that is amazing. And then you reach out to the architect and say, I love this, I don't like this, let's put something together. Because most of the stuff that I see is extremely flat and one-dimensional.
Interesting. That makes sense. And do you think that, from as an end user, like how long, would that process be if they're trying to find something, custom, right? If they're trying to do something custom, how long is that process from start to finish, more or less? I know you don't like timelines.
If they already had the land?
Yes. Let's say
So
they already
once you
found
buy
the
the
land.
land, I think you're very safe. Figure a year for permits. By the way, they will lie to you. Everyone will lie to you about timeline. Everyone. Figure a year for permits.
Okay.
Do yourself a favor.
So if they tell you 6 months, run.
Correct. I mean, right now, I think Durham, I don't know what Durham's backlogged, but Durham is always a bottleneck. We're sitting here waiting to go through the design review board. Oh, that meeting's in October. So run fast.
Okay.
And a lot of times, it's like it's hard. And this as a realtor, you'll have realtors come into someone's house and tell them, oh, your house is worth $18 million. I'm gonna sell it for $18 million. Just sign here to give me the listing agreement. It's no different in the construction industry. Oh, it's going to be 6 months for a permit and 6 months for construction. Just sign here and give me a 50% deposit.
Right.
And so where do we live? We live in Miami. So you have a lot of that.
So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
It is. Not probably. So yeah, I would say a year for permits. I think you're safe for a year. Okay. And I would say for construction, figure another year. If you can figure, yes, could it be done faster? Yeah. And a lot of this is based on, okay, are you making any changes on the project as you're moving through the project? Do you have any supply issues where, oh my God, I want that specific kitchen, and now we have a problem where that specific kitchen company's ship is stranded? You have to be malleable or you have to be patient. It's one of those two things.
Okay.
But I think if you figure two, worst case scenario, 2.5, I think you're very safe.
Okay.
If you think that you're going to do it in a year, I have a nice oceanfront property in Tennessee built on spec waiting for you.
Amazing. Well, tell me a little bit about what you've got on the horizon right now. So what do you guys have? What are you working on right now? So we can kind of, leave the audience with this. So want to hear what you're planning right now. I know that you're doing this big construction on Miami Beach. When is that going to break ground? What do you have going on there?
Yeah, so that's something that we're extremely excited about. I think that what the architect put together is fantastic. I love the design. We've got to have a couple of actually relatively small things that we need approved from the design review board. So hopefully they will. We'll present in October. Non-waterfront, very cool, very, lots of texture, lots of metal and wood and, glass, all very things cool. I love, and planters and foliage. I love all of those things. Neat concept where the yard, it has a backyard and a side yard, which I think is really cool. So instead of the typical focus being from the back, it's actually on the side. You have a lot of, you have some overhangs over the pools. It's just super impressed with the design. I think it's going to be a blast to build. And that's going to be really a lot of the crux of it. We're always, being a spec guy, I'm always looking. I can tell you I've had like 10 emails in the last 30 minutes for properties, keeping my eye on the market, everywhere from Jupiter down. Just taking a look at kind of what the market's doing, what's doing in Miami, what's doing, currently in up there. But for the most part, just staying busy, and hopefully we'll get the approvals that we need for the Miami Beach house and drive on.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see it. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. When do you expect that to be delivered, more or less?
I have no idea.
No idea.
You know, I think once we have the approval for the plans,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be a lot, a much different conversation.
Okay.
I would say, where are we? October would be the design review. So if they approve, maybe there's adjustments. When's the next meeting? That's actually something that we had a conversation with. Is it worth it? Is it worth really all of this extra headache? And I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
For both of us, how can we put just this amazing product there? Is it worth, if it takes us an extra 4 months on the review process? So we sat down, we talked about it, and we said, yeah, absolutely. Design's killer. It's one of those things where, we'll rent the house out for
Amazing.
an extra 4 months.
Right.
Just so that we get it. And that's, I think, one of those questions. Are you patient or are you in a hurry? And for me, on this project, because what we're trying to create, I'm patient.
Yeah. No, you have to be, for sure. For sure. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything I've got. Thank you so much for coming over today and just giving us so much knowledge and, all of your tips. And I think that was super informative. Anything that you want to leave us with, or, how to reach out to you? Are you taking on any projects if someone wanted to do something custom? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're always, I'm always available to listen.
Awesome.
I have actually a project that we took on. Was a massive project on the Venetian, very, very high end project. And she and I became great friends just through the process. And she said, you know what, your next project, I want to do it with you. And so,
Awesome.
it's nice when you can build those types of relationships with those types of people. That's super special. That's not to say that project didn't have problems. We had,
Of course.
typical problems come up along the way. But I think one of the things is, how you handle them and how you move forward. So we'll always look, and I'm happy to help people too, because I get it. It can be super overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I have people reach out to me, and sometimes I say, hey, listen, call this person. It's not something that we would do, but give them a call. They'll help you out. Tell them I sent you.
Amazing. Even if it's, let's say, not a ground up construction, if it was just, you purchased a house and they just wanted to completely overhaul it. I mean, that's
Sure.
definitely something you guys would do.
Yeah. Something that's it's
Awesome.
common, and that's actually, most people don't realize, but that's actually harder.
Is it?
If you're changing structural, it becomes a lot harder than just following blueprints. You really have to understand what's there and dig in, dig your heels in a little bit more. New construction is actually fairly easy because it's straightforward. You don't have, there aren't really too many, problems that arise from opening up this piece of drywall and all of a sudden there's rotted whatever, or
Yeah.
but yeah, that's certainly something that we've done in the past and will continue to do.
Okay. Great to know. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully, we'll keep following along on all your future projects, and yeah, we'll stay in touch. Thank you again.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah. Talk soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye.